Hey, welcome back, everyone. My name is Tanner Bryan. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach, and I got a great conversation for you here today. Kay and I sat down. We did almost kind of a quasi coaching conversation on really the topic about managing leads. So, managing your pipeline. How do I, not get overwhelmed with all of the follow up? And, if I have 10, 20, 30 leads per week, like what do I do with them all? How do I make sure that things are happening? So we dive into this a little bit and we talk about from, early startup phase to like, I'm just getting into this and this is what I'm doing to, all right, I'm getting ready for a little bit more sophistication, adding in some automation and all that fun stuff. So really just a great conversation to kind of walk through what does this look like in practice? What are some tactical things that you can do to get started and really ensure that we've got the best ability to move things forward in our pipeline and managing our leads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Kay and I on managing your leads and your overall pipeline.
Today, we have a super awesome treat for you because we're going to address something that I've been working on in my business, and that is organizing my clients. Anybody that I've met recently that could be maybe a strategic partner or even a sponsor, or anybody that's really in your network within your business. And I know it can be overwhelming sometimes to organize these people to kind of like structure it in a way that works for you. So today, Tanner is going to be guiding us through how to organize all of your contacts and keep a pulse on when to contact them and when to reach out, along with just avoiding that overwhelm. So thank you, Tanner. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation.
It's a fun one. I'm excited to jump in, kind of hear a little bit about how that's been working for you and kind of what your thoughts are and what questions you have along the way to kind of talk through this process of really managing our pipeline and understanding how and when to follow up with contacts and things like that.
Well, definitely. And that is something I've been working on, like you said, too. And it's like, it's been overwhelming. I've been kind of like, how do I organize who, where? I think that's my biggest thing just off the bat is just trying to organize people depending on if they're, say, like a direct client, a sponsor, any of those categories. How would you start like building the structure of an organizational tool for that?
Mm. I mean, I'm always going to recommend using some sort of CRM or client management relationship tool. That being said, because I know there's a ton of them out there on the market that can be used, can be leveraged, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to, especially if you're earlier on in business and you're starting this process. Something as simple as an Excel workbook or Google Sheets or something like that can be used for this, depending on the volume that you have. The intention is, am I capturing the data that I need to, and am I setting some sort of tag or categorization for those that I'm meeting so that I know what to do next, right? So you had mentioned strategic partners versus clients versus like even prospects. Customers, clients should always be tagged as customers or clients because that way, as you grow and you do more marketing and things like that, you don't want to be sending them necessarily marketing messages to make them become a client when they're already a client. They need a different type of messaging. Same thing with strategic partners. They may not need the same type of marketing material as your prospects do. So that's kind of the first thing. Is like how just generating some sort of separation between those, and that can be done as simply as in Excel, where you have like name, contact information, and then like category. Are they a drop down or just a field that you fill in that's either strategic partner or client or prospect or XYZ, right? It can be that simple to get it started. And then as you get into some of the more sophisticated tools, CRMs, things like that, then there's a lot more that we can start to do from developing out what that looks like, how to follow up it, and things of that nature.
Oh, definitely. The tagging makes a lot of sense too, because then you can kind of like when you're looking at sending out a newsletter or any additional marketing just to keep everybody organized and in their right place. And so, say take a startup business, say someone like me who's meeting, depending on the day, 10 to 20 people per day if I'm actively networking or going to something specific. What are some of those first steps when you either exchange contact info, get that business card, whatever it looks like? What are some of those first steps of like creating a healthy kind of habit around getting them into your pipeline?
Yeah. So first and foremost is grabbing the information and putting it into a centralized location, right? So I just mentioned spreadsheets or a CRM or something like that, but having somewhere that you're going to put it, that's probably step number one is regardless of who they are, what you talked about, how warm the lead is, all of that kind of stuff, you're going to want to put it in some sort of centralized format. That's probably step number one. Step number two then is capturing as much information as you possibly can. And what I mean by this is not necessarily just name, email, phone number, etc., but name, email, phone number. What did we talk about? How long did we talk? Like,
Mm.
what are some of the things that made me think a certain way about this particular person? Do I think they're more of a strategic partner? Do I think that there's someone who's like, yeah, I want to talk to them about business like tomorrow? Or did we just have kind of a nice little interaction and I'm going to need to develop that relationship? And that's kind of where warmth of lead comes in. So that's kind of step two. First is centralized location to put them all in. Step two is starting to parse out how much information can I remember about this person and putting it. As regardless of how great all of us are, most of the time we're still going to forget information. So the more notes we can put in, the more kind of check boxes that we can fill in, the easier it will be when we go back to look at, okay, so I've got 100 leads now. What do I do with each of these? Which ones did I have a deeper conversation with? Because those are going to be the ones that are probably going to convert at a higher level. I want to focus on those versus the ones that I just like met in passing, got their business card, and that's kind of all we got at that point. Um, so that's kind of the first iteration is just getting that information in, and then as you work through this progress, I think the natural next step is how warm is the lead, and
Mhm.
there's a couple different ways to look at that, but in simple terms, it's if you look at cold versus warm versus hot leads, right? Cold being they don't really know who you are. They might be aware of kind of some of the problems that they have out there, but that's about it, right? A warm lead is someone that knows that they have a problem and kind of want it solved, but don't quite know that you can solve it for them yet. But you've at least had some of that conversation, and then hot leads being like they have a problem. They know you can solve it. Let's go have a conversation because they're basically ready to buy. And you're going to be able to tell that from those initial conversations that you have. So that's a simplistic way to look at it. You want to start getting deeper into marketing stuff, classifying them as just a lead. For me, that's a name and a phone number essentially, or a name and an email. Marketing qualified leads means that you've had some sort of conversation about what you do. Sales qualified meaning that they actually have the ability to buy from you and have articulated that they have a need. And then I like to call it an opportunity, but getting into that sales conversation, kind of parsing through different levels of that. Go even deeper, and then we start talking about lead scoring, and talking about really how many times have you interacted and things like that. And that usually gets a lot better when you get into the technology side of things. You start using a sophisticated CRM. But from a starting point, it's a matter of can we put it in a centralized location? Can we get as much information as we can and highlight specific aspects of it so that when we do our follow up, we know the ones that are most likely to convert and spending more of our time and energy towards those.
Oh, well, those are some great tips, especially for getting started, like where I'm just kind of like getting the ball rolling on these different types of leads. Now, when it comes to, say, you're looking at, say, a different type of person, which, like, say, a sponsor for something like a podcast. Would you create a separate sheet for all the different types of individuals, or would you create like categories within say, we'll take a Google Sheets, for example?
Yeah. I think there's phases to unrolling this, right? If this is brand new to you, I think just putting it into a single sheet and noting them as either strategic partner or sponsor or prospect or client is a good place to start. Um, More than likely at that phase, you're not dealing with thousands upon thousands of leads. You're looking at maybe a couple hundred, which gives you the ability to kind of parse through that and really remember most people.
Mhm.
That if you're just starting, that's what I'd recommend. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced, or you do start to have a little bit of a team, or you're going to work with, say, a marketing agency or something else like that, then I'm going to recommend going a bit deeper. Um, in which case you're probably graduating away from just using spreadsheets. So now you're in some level of CRM. There's some that are free out there. There's some that are paid in varying degrees, from a couple $100 a month all the way up to thousands per month, right? Um, but when you're looking at it and you're looking at, okay, a sponsor versus a lead from a networking event that could be a prospect for you, the life cycle of each of those is going to be different. There's going to be different stages that they're going to go through. Like, you have that initial conversation with both of them, but their next step and that next conversation is going to be different. Depending on what you're selling, the prospect may need 6 or 7 different touch points, or 6 or 7 different things that they go through before you get to the sales meeting. Whereas a sponsor might need 4, and the 4 is just a couple meetings to get them excited about the thing that they can sponsor, right? There are going to be different meetings, different kind of subsets of what that activity is going to look like. In which case, separate pipelines make sense. You don't want to necessarily kind of muddle it all together into one thing. You want to know, here's all the 50 different sponsor opportunities that I've talked to. They're in a specific pipeline, going to get different messaging, different touch points, different all this other stuff, because they're not prospects. They need something different in order to convert as a sponsor. Whereas my prospects, for whatever I'm selling, that's going to be a completely different animal, and they may need XYZ different steps and different messaging because of it. So, long and short of kind of what you had just asked is, if you're just starting out, I think having it in one sheet and just being able to manage between the different categories is fine. As you graduate up, then you can go as deep as you want. I'm sitting here going, I'd love to go, what are all the 20 different steps and messages and things like that for each of these in different pipelines. But that's the
Mhm.
complete other end of the spectrum.
Well, that really maps it out beautifully. And it kind of leads me right into my next question, which is like, say you meet that person, whoever it is in the category, and they're really excited to work with you, and you make that initial touch point, and then you notice like they're not responding, or there's things going on. Like, how would you go about building that connection more, or getting them to respond to you to set up that initial coffee meeting?
Hmm. I think there's a couple ways to tackle it depending on the information that you uncovered. So depending on the kind of content and context of that initial conversation, if you're able to find out a lot of information about this individual and uncover a few pain points and things like that in that initial conversation, then those follow-ups should be referencing back to parts of your conversation, parts of things that you uncovered. And the reality is, especially if it's via email, things like that, we all tend to get busy, and it takes 3, 4, 5, 7 different email exchanges before you finally get a response.
Mhm.
And sometimes, just like on that track, sometimes you get to like the seventh one, and be like, based on our conversation, this seems highly unusual that we wouldn't have connected by now. Is everything okay? Like 9 times out of 10, I get a response from that type of an email. And then
Mhm.
that kind of opens the door. So that would be piece number one, is like, what did you uncover? And if we're not getting them to respond, then there might have been something that we missed in the initial conversation. Now, second piece is, what information can I find that's going to be relevant to them, that's going to get their attention? Most people have a lot of information online these days, right? You can go to LinkedIn, you can go to Instagram, you go to Facebook, go to whatever platforms. Maybe it's their own website, maybe it's a personal website for them. But you can do a little bit of research, and I think putting in the effort to do some of that research and be able to highlight something that they've said recently or something that's going on in their lives, that's going to get their attention faster than just the generic, hey, I'm following up from our conversation the other day. If you're like me, more than likely you get 100 of those a day, whether it's from LinkedIn messages or Instagram messages or emails or whatever. So if you can make it more highly personable, either to the conversation that you've had, or because you actually did your own research and said, hey, I know we had this conversation. It was great to just kind of get to know you. I saw that you did X, Y, and Z. Last weekend you posted this thing. It really resonated with me. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions about it? The likelihood of getting a response is much higher when you do that type of effort.
That is true. I just thinking back to experiences that I've done that in like kind of applied those techniques recently. It really works. It gets people excited because people like to hear about themselves, or approach it like, wow, I really liked what you talked about on XYZ podcast. I'd like to connect with you on Instagram and keep the conversation going. And I've noticed that it does like, it really works to just show a little interest and do a little research on someone, or just genuinely try to connect with those people that do resonate with you. So that's really, really great.
Yeah, another, I mean, especially since you're referencing more yeah, networking opportunities in general. At least that's kind of what we started this conversation on. Now, I think things shift a little bit. If you're doing direct outreach to people on LinkedIn or Facebook ads or something else like that, it's a little bit more digital, a little bit colder. But especially from a networking standpoint, sometimes the lead in can be, hey, we had this conversation XYZ. You had mentioned some of the people that you were trying to connect with in your network. I know this person over here and this person over here. I think it would be great to connect y'all and start the conversation that way. How do you give back? How do you think about what's
Mm.
in it for them on why they should continue to have a conversation with you? And that's not a here's what I do. So, you should buy from me or have a conversation with me. It's, what are the things that you uncovered that you can help them with? And that opens the door of conversation. Conversations are going to lead to customers more often than not.
Oh, definitely. I've done that as well. Just like thinking, how can I be a connector for them? And connect them with someone, like, especially here in Austin, it's like everybody's moving in, and you can meet someone who maybe just moved here a month ago and they have a really good something that you guys could work together on. But you can also say, hey, well, I'm connected with a few other people in this industry. I'd love to invite you to the next meetup or something, and kind of be that contact with them, especially moving to a new place.
Mm. So if we bring this all back, you had mentioned at the beginning, how do we make this not overwhelming in terms of, following up with leads and all of that kind of stuff. And at some point, you're going to have to look at it and go, at what point do I have too many leads or too many contacts coming in that I am not converting anything downstream? Now, I'm not
Mhm.
saying stop doing what you're doing. That you never want to stop marketing. However, it does become a question of if all I'm doing is I'm going to networking events and I'm never following up with anybody because it's just I've got hundreds of them coming in each week and I'm just not doing anything with them, then we're not optimizing for downstream. And
Mhm.
at that point, you're kind of wasting your time and your dollars, whether it's, paying to go to a networking event or you're actually investing into a marketing strategy. If you're never working on optimizing down funnel, then at the end of the day, you're never going to get the return. So there does become a point when it can feel overwhelming, but you've got to focus your time on what's going to lead you to the end result that you actually look for. And if that means you have 10 leads this week, fantastic. Which two to three of those are the highest quality, greatest probability of moving into some sort of next step, and go as hard as you can on following up with those. I'm always going
Mhm.
to be a fan of follow up with everybody as much as you can until I tell you to go away. But with limited amounts of time, if you are bringing in enough volume, then it's going to be focus on the ones that are the warmest, focus on the ones that are going to get you to the point where you can drive some sales so you have profitability to then potentially hire some team members, kind of buy back your time and allow you to continue to increase the overall volume, or work on adding in some technology pieces where you can do some automation and things like that. But it does become okay, we talked about warm versus cold versus hot traffic or leads. How do I focus on the ones that are warm and hot, even though the volume of cold might be way, way higher? How do I focus on the ones that are going to bring me the greatest end result so that I can kind of keep this flywheel going?
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Tanner. This has been so insightful. Thank you for covering all these different elements of, keeping a healthy pipeline and knowing to kind of create harmony within when you're reaching out and really look at the quality over quantity. So thank you. Thank you so much for this insight.
Been a lot of fun.